Hey guys, welcome to Other Stuff. This week I am making some 2x4 garden furniture, and that looks a bit like this. If you want to see how I made that, materials I used, processes, that sort of thing, stick around. Remember, while this intro's on, drop me a like and subscribe to my channel. So as always, I'll be taking you through what I'm up to, but we can't do that in here because the chairs will be too big. So let's pop out to the garden. So the materials I'm using for this build are all pressure treated softwoods, and what I've got is some C24 structural grade 2x4s, and then some 3x1s which are just, I think, used for fence slats, but they've got two rounded corners on. All of these come pre-planed and smoothed, so it means less sanding later, and because they're pressure treated means they're good for outdoor use. So before I started committing to any cuts of the materials, I thought I would just model the chair that I was going to build in Google SketchUp. It's not a program I use very often or for many of my projects. I usually like to just wing it and make it as I go along. But in this case, I wanted to make sure that I would like the look of the chairs before I committed to any cuts. And it also allowed me to play with things like height of the seats, the arms, the angles of the backs, and the sort of the base and that sort of thing. And it also allowed me to understand or get a cut list out of it, and makes it easier then just to go straight to the chop saw and cut all the pieces that I wanted. And the size of the chair, or at least the seat's base, is based around the cushion I'm going to use for it, and that one came from IKEA, so that's 620mm square, or I think that's about 25 inches square, and just set the dimensions for the rest of the chair, and then it was just about getting it all in proportion. So first job was to cut everything to length, and I knew how long I wanted all the bits because I had a Google SketchUp model for it, so it just meant I needed to cut them all on my chop saw. For the joinery on the furniture, I'm going to be using a classic butt joint, which is the simplest of woodworking joins, and what that entails is just butting one piece of wood up to the other. Now, to make this stronger, I'm going to be using glue in that join for one, and then I'm also using some coach bolts. So these are quite big and hefty, but I do want this to last. So big, but because I don't want to see the coach bolts once I've installed them, I'm going to be recessing them into the end of the posts. So to do that, I'm using a 16mm spade bit, so that'll cut down to about halfway on the join, and then going through the rest of the way with a 6mm wood drill bit, so that I can pre-drill the bits of wood, and then I'll be driving the coach bolts through, and then using a 16mm plug cutter, which is in the end of my drill at the moment because I was just testing it out. Using a 16mm plug cutter, I will cut some plugs out of some offcuts and use those to plug the holes afterwards, and I'll trim those flush, and that'll be that. So when drilling the holes, I wanted them all in the same place. So I wanted to make that easy for myself. So I knocked up this little plywood jig, which has got two holes, which are then used a screw in this case just to mark where I was going to drill, and then I could use the spade bit to drill the holes in the same location on all the pieces, and that gives me a bit more of a uniform look. So once all the holes were drilled, it was just a case of then starting the assembly. So I started with the rectangular arms. You can see here I'm using some Gorilla Glue, which is good for external. And then I'm pre-drilling and then using the coach bolts to fasten everything together. And you can see I'm sinking those heads well below the surface. And then I just did that on all the pieces. So there's the arms for the sides on both chairs, and that's the bases. So with the main building blocks done, next job was to put somewhere for the slats to rest. And here I'm just using a bit of 2x1 on each in the interior faces of what will be the base. Or the seat, and I'm just affixing that the depth of the slats away from the sort of edge, and fixing that with some glue and some screws, and I'll do that on both sides of both bases. Okay, we're done. It's time to mount the bases to the sides, and because I want a 5-degree angle, I'm marking higher on the front than I am on the back. That allows me to get the angle that I want. So with the seat base just resting in the position that I wanted it, I could then mark off where the coach bolt would go, which is going to hold the sides to the base. Because of the position of the two coach bolts which held the base frame together, it meant I could really only fit one coach bolt through the side, which went in the centre. Ideally, I guess I would want another two, but I can only fit one. And as you can see here, it did stand up to a weight test halfway through. So I was pretty happy with just one in each corner. So once I was happy with the frame and that it was all connected together, I went on to cut the slats for the seat base. Now again, I'm using the 3x1 with the rounded corners, cutting those to length, and then fixing them in. So to get the angle that I want on the seat backs, I am cutting a 10-degree slice off of one end of my seat backs. I'm then using that 10-degree edge to butt up against the seat. That sets the angle of the back, and I'm just clamping that in place and using some wood screws in this case to secure those in place. I went for wood screws here. It's just easier than putting in the coach bolts, and they'll be plenty strong enough to hold the back in place. And once the back was glued and screwed in position, it meant that I could then do the same with the back that I did with the base in putting the slats on, by putting a 2x1 into the, recessing that back, the width of the slats, and screwing the slats on with some wood screws. And once I had one, it was just a case of following the same construction to get two. With them both assembled, I then went back to the shed to cut all of my plugs out. Needed quite a lot of plugs in the end, but you can see here I'm just cutting them out and then loosening them off with a screwdriver, and they all came out. And then it was just a case of using some more glue to put those in place, wait for them to dry, and then cut them flush with a Japanese pool saw. While I was installing the plugs in the bottom of the chair, I just installed some rubber feet. This will just raise the wood off the floor, means it won't stand any standing water, and hopefully last a bit longer. And with that, the construction was complete, and I was on to finishing. So I'm just sanding everything down with a 120 sandpaper. I'm doing that all over both of them. And then I can apply a finish. And in this case, I'm just using some Ronseal medium oak or natural oak wood stain. And I'll put a total of 3 coats on. So there we are, some 2x4 garden chairs, and there they are with the cushions on them. So there we have it. That was some 2x4 garden furniture. I'm really pleased with the way they look, really comfortable to sit in. But as always, I'm going to celebrate my hard day's work with a beer. And today I've got, for anyone who's interested, a Deo something good. Oh, that is something good. Remember, you stay safe, get some stuff done.